Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live, and I'm Cyril Stover. Now, according to a recent housing market survey in Nigeria, there are 23 dwellings for every 1,000 inhabitants. Now, the country's estimated housing deficit as of November 2022 was a shocking 25 million units, an increase of more than 15% from January 2019 data. Now, the deficit will require around 21 trillion naira to cover. Rapid population growth, urbanization, and economic development have posed significant challenges to the housing sector in there. With an estimated population of more than 200 million people, the demand for affordable housing has reached an all-time high. Now, recognizing this urgent need, the Nigerian government has implemented various initiatives to address the issue, such as the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, the Family Homes Fund, and renewed megacities. Additionally, the private sector has played a crucial role in developing low-cost housing projects. Tonight, Tuesday Live aims to shed light on the current state of affordable housing in Nigeria, highlighting the importance of collaboration between stakeholders in meeting the growing demand. But before we go into the conversation, let's get to see this backgrounder put together by correspondent Francis Udojo.
Since Nigeria attained independence in 1960, successive governments have rolled out several policies to address housing needs of the people. Yet, systematic issues have continued to constitute barriers in realizing government true intentions of actualizing the noble housing objectives. These challenges range from ineffective land administration systems, inconsistencies in policy implementation, suboptimal performance of federal housing institutions, obsolete housing laws, to duplication of functions by institutions and agencies, amongst others. The result is a dysfunctional housing delivery market, prevalence of slums, and a huge housing shortage that experts estimate to range from 12 million in 2007 to 28 million housing deficit in 2023. With Nigeria's estimated population of 226.2 million, key players say there is an urgent need to address the housing needs of the people. The present administration, in its wisdom and in a bid to tackle the challenges of housing deficit headlong, pulled the Ministry of Housing out of works, giving it full autonomy to perform optimally, doling out 100 billion naira in the 2023 supplementary budget and 18.9 billion naira in the 2024 budget. This gave rise to a robust plan of government to deliver renewed hope cities and estates of 100,000 housing units across the Federation. The pilot stage was the inauguration of 3,112 unit sites in Karasana, with a complementary roles of private sectors and developers. Agencies like the FHA, FMBN are part of the housing delivery process, where National Housing Fund could be accessed by low-income earners and vulnerable Nigerians through a mortgage plan.
The Renewed Hope Cities and Estates program is part of the Federal Ministry of Housing and Urban Development's plan, New City Development Plan. The idea is to decongest city centers by opening up new cities, well-designed cities on the outskirts of cities, complete with access roads and relevant infrastructure. During the launch of the 3,112 housing unit, that PPP at Karasana, Mr. President was very gracious to direct the Minister of Works and the Minister of FCT to ensure that access roads are built to every one of these 7 cities that are planned in select locations across the country, including FCT. If you're building a city and you don't have proper access road, then it's as good as a slum.
Nigeria should expect affordable housing, within a very limitation of time. In another 12 months, you will see that those who are off-takers here will be collecting their keys. That's why we hope that Mr. President will be back in another 12 months to come and distribute keys to the occupiers here.
We have tasked him to set and organize reforms in the housing sector. Of course, in a couple of weeks, we'll be having the reports of these tax teams, and to go a long way in ensuring that whatever policy we put in place, whatever action we are taking, will meet the need and the yearnings of the Nigerian populace.
As National Assembly members, we'll ensure that we do our oversight function very well and effectively, so that those who are supposed to benefit from these housing schemes are those benefiting.
Going by the Ministry of Housing, several engagements with critical stakeholders and activities so far, Nigerians would soon hope to see the lingering issue of housing deficit in the country as a thing of the past. In Abuja, Francis Sudojo.
All right, that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let's start off by introducing our guests. We'd like to welcome to this program the Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Architect Ahmed Musa Engiwa. Minister, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you. Good evening.
We're also joined tonight by Akindolire Oludamola. He's a lead consultant for the Consortium of Developers. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you, and good evening, viewers.
And also joining us is Niya Keshiju. He's a financial and development expert and is chairman, Independent Media and Policy Initiative. Niya, it's good to see you again.
It's a pleasure as always. Thanks so much.
Right, thank you. Well, as you well know, at some point in time, the program gets interactive. It means you can join in the conversation. But when it is that time, we'll remind you of the process and the procedure. For now, let's begin to look at the issues regarding housing development and accessibility to ownership. And where else to start than with the minister himself? And Minister, well, from the reports we've seen there, focus of your ministry is to do with the federal government, and the federal government, of course, has to do with provision of housing. But with what we're seeing, some would say, isn't this a little bit over-ambitious? Put it in perspective for us.
Well, we can't say it's over-ambitious, because whatever we are doing, we are still falling short of what we are supposed to do. With the 28 million deficit, as you have said, that we are having, I think there has to be an aggressive way of achieving that target. And the little way we could do is to follow this path we are doing through the renewed hope vision of housing and urban development of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, which has just started. First, he created a Ministry of Housing on itself. The second is this renewed hope vision for housing development in the country. We started with the renewed hope vision because it's a practical way of actualizing that vision, in the sense that we intend to have cities, 7 cities in the country, 1 in each vertical zone plus the Federal Capital Territory. And then we have renewed hope estates, which are affordable houses that we intend to create in each of the remaining 30 states in the country. Affordable should be very much affordable to the low and medium income earners, who constitute over 80% of the population of the country. So as far as we are concerned, the 100,000 housing units we are talking about per annum is a bit over ambitious to the budgetary allocations that we are having, because to fund 100,000 houses, even if it is at 8 million naira house, then you are talking about 800 billion naira, which is a bit beyond the capacity of the budgetary allocations. That's why we have to take other pragmatic ways of going through the PPP, public-private partnerships. And we are also optimizing the capacities of all other housing institutions under the ministry, combine efforts. That will what will deliver the 100,000 housing that we are talking about.
All right, we'll look at some of those things in greater detail. But let's come to Akindolire. You're the lead consultant for the consortium of developers, and yes, 100,000. If you multiply that by just the mathematics that the minister has just done here, you're looking at a humongous amount of money. Yes, there's a public-private partnership, but again, there are certain aspects in the construction industry that are wholly dependent on government policies. So, coming from the private sector, you look at these and you have the confidence that what happened or what used to happen in the past about shift or what most people would call a somersault in policies will not affect this project.
Okay, good evening and thank you so much for having me here. Again, like we all know, government's primary objective in any society is to provide the enabling environment. And this starts from providing strong leadership, which is what His Excellency the President has done by trying to remove the cosmetic elements that prevent investments from coming in and removing barriers as much as so. And that's the first step we have seen in the private sector to say this is now a serious attempt to deal with this housing crisis head on. And then more importantly, we have now also found that Mr. President's appointment into the Ministry of Housing has also shown that we have the round peg in the round hole this time. And we have seen the track record of Architect Ahmed Daniwa in the past. And we also have strong belief in his leadership to ensure that we follow through on government policies like he has done in the past. Now, and that's all the private sector needs to move a needle further. You have to understand that the housing deficits cannot be solved by the government alone. Budgetary allocations are limited, competing demands on government resources, and therefore the private sector must wade in because we are the ones mostly affected by this deficit in question. And that is why if you look at contributors to the pension funds and the contributors to the national housing funds, you will notice that we are the ones that form the large pool of housing, people that need houses. So once there is strong leadership, clear policy direction, we believe that it is now time for the private sector to stop sitting on the sidelines and then begin to partner with government to deliver this kind of large and unprecedented projects to meet the needs of Nigerians. Otherwise, we are going to have to wait. Imagine if we had to divide 800 billion by the budgetary allocation of the Ministry of Housing. It means we'd have to wait roughly 10 years to catch up with 100,000 before we even move to even talking about a dent in the housing deficit. So those are the things that we need to do to move forward. And that's why we're talking about strong leadership, clear policy direction, removing red tapes, barriers to investments, and that's the way we can solve the housing crisis in Nigeria.
Okay, thanks a lot. And Kishiju, situate for us how this project can impact economic development.
Thank you very much. There's nothing as exciting as talking about housing. It's the basis of asset acquisition and development. It's in any asset classification. And we can look at it from different perspectives. One, in terms of wealth creation, is the easiest way for the individual low-income earner to be an asset owner. And by being an asset owner, it's a direct linkage to wealth creation. That is one. Then two, in the Nigerian culture, across virtually all ethnic groups, ownership of homes, ownership of housing is a sine qua non, if I should use that word. It's a requirement of adulthood. So, and that is for either the man or the woman, but most especially the man. In any community, in any culture, as you reach a certain age, the expectation is that you are a landlord, you know. So it ties in with asset acquisition, cultural pursuit and satisfaction. And when you come to the urban centers, you also realize the need, you know, for low-cost access to low-cost housing, because the character, the nature of humanity change by the migration of people from the rural to the urban centers. So whereupon you have a sedate, I mean, you grew up in a sedate environment, you grew up in a very conservative rural environment, but because of economic needs, you had to migrate to the city center, your outlook changes, you know, and in changing, as it changes, it will now depend on your available space of shelter. Of course, we know that shelter is a major point in the hierarchy, the Maslow hierarchy of needs. So, and that is where it is most needed. At the end of the day, your first day of arrival, if you don't have a place that you could call your own, you become a destitute. And from destitution, you go into criminality and so on. So it also have an impact on the security, you know, environment or psyche of the average individual. So essentially, I think this is a vision that is most welcome. And yes, Nigeria, we've had government in Nigeria that had made this a major pivot of administration. And we hope that this will be pursued with all the vigorous and the seriousness that is required, because mostly it does mean that in the next 18 months or thereabout, we are going to have 100,000 millionaires in assets.
Okay. I like to take it from that bit where you talked about governments in the past having enunciated policies that were targeted at providing adequate shelter. Minister, in fact, we could go even as far back as the Shagari era, where there was what was required, referred to as the Shagari housing. Yes. But all these plans, successive governments, they've had what might be termed limited successes for so many reasons, numerous reasons. What are you bringing with the benefit of hindsight? What knowledge and changes are you bringing to what had bedeviled such ideals in the past to make sure this doesn't go the same way? If you look around the country, you'll find various attempts at mass housing that you could straight away declare as failures.
Well, as you quite well know that the subsequent government have done their own housing policies, to which at certain level they could not conclude it, or due to one reason or the other. Like Shagari, it became a success, I know, to a certain extent, because up till now people remember it, and there are still traces of those houses in most of the local governments you find across the country. What's important is that whatever you're going to do, you have to ensure that housing is, you need to look at the cultural setting of the people, what type of housing you are bringing to them. And before giving a house to anybody, you have to, before building the house, you have to ensure that the income of the off-takers is clearly taken into consideration. Because most of the houses in the subsequent government, they build the houses but nobody to buy the houses, because the income, the affordability were not done, or tests were not done on the off-takers. Once you look at the income of the target audience, then you should be able to now build houses based on the income they can be able to buy. Affordability is 1/3 of your income. What 1/3 of your income can be able to procure for you, to purchase for you? That is it. Despite the fact that we have low household income within the country, even at the moment, we have high cost of building materials, but all the time you have to consider that. So what we did at the ministry when we came on board, we realized that let's sit down as professionals in the built environment that the housing ministry is made of. It's made of architects, engineers, quantity surveyors, and planners. So we said, please sit down and set up a task force, produce an affordable design that cut across all cultures, that can be affordable to all class of people. The renewed hope estate that we are talking about are targeting the low and medium income earners, and in such a way that we have a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, and a 3-bedroom, all on the same plot size of 50 by 100 minimum size. The reason is that the design is such a way that that 1-bedroom could be transformed into a 2-bedroom by adding 1 or 2 walls. At the same time, the 2 bedrooms can be converted into 3 bedrooms by adding 1 or 2 walls. As the family grows, the family income, the owner can increase it with little efforts, and just by extending the roof behind. At the front, all the houses, they look the same thing, but behind is where you are going to have your increment. If you can't afford the 3-bedroom, it's as well you can just take the 2 bedrooms, and then incrementally as your income increases or as your savings increases, you can be able to convert it into that. So that concept we know that is going to assist the off-takers. At least you have a choice. Nobody can say that he doesn't have a choice in choosing what he wants. Even if you can't afford something else, you can take the lower one, and then later it increases into your target income. So that's what we are targeting, the renewed hope estates in all the 30 states of the Federation. The remaining estates, cities that we are doing, these ones we are doing it in the 6 geopolitical zones, 1 in each geopolitical zones. This one, the main purpose is to congest the city centers and ensure that there's inclusivity in the housing in every city we are going to develop.
And those ones in those cities, what mode will they take? Who are the targets of those ones?
The target, honestly, we are targeting that we are going to involve more majorly the private sector, the PPP arrangement, whereby they come in, they invest in such a way we build those estates. But at the same time, in every estate we are going to have a cross-subsidy, whereby the lower income can have an access. As little percentage of those houses who could have an access into even the cities.
That's exactly what we were going to talk about, to say the affordability and the access to those, because from what experience that have been garnered from private sector participation most times, and you would bear this out, these plans come into place, the private sector accesses the basics, and then somewhere along the line things change. Now, this time around, you yourself have said that you've seen a seriousness on the part of government. Now it behoves on the private sector next to match that. Are we looking at this private sector as the one that had, after land allocation, you know how all the stories go.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I mean, we would have incidences like that, particularly where there's very high housing deficits. However, I think it speaks to not just the seriousness, but also the application of the right strategy. This is one initiative where there's a collaborative approach, and which I will call a win-win. For example, on the spot, at the groundbreaking at Karsana, the President immediately directed the Minister of FCT and the Minister of Works to immediately provide access roads to all Renewed Hope estates and cities. Ordinarily, that's something the private sector would have had to find a way to execute. And the costs of those things don't come cheap.
Yeah, we know. So that's why you see so many of these estates developed by private developers. You find that the structures are there, and they probably
and it's not affordable. So that's a very clear sign of seriousness, backed by action, backed by the #1 citizen of the country, and they have begun to follow through on those commitments. That's one. Number two, we've also sat into a think tank meetings with the Ministry of Housing to say, how can we bring down the cost of houses? And there are multiple factors involved. The cost of items, materials, which is a big concern in the community, in the country today. As you can see, the Home Minister has immediately waded into the incidents and has secured commitments from the cement manufacturers to at least reach a certain price point with respect to cement prices. In the past, these things could have festered a bit longer, and then we in the private sector begin to lose hope. But we've seen immediate action and we've seen immediate response. Now, take it to the cross-subsidy element of it, which is where we cross-fertilize ideas, where the ministry says, we think we can deliver these houses at this price point. So why don't we create more high-value units, pass a little bit more cost to those high-value units to subsidize the low and middle-income housing units and make them affordable.
At this point, I'm not jumping the gun, but one is tempted to think, yes, we've talked about, low income, middle income, the houses will be affordable. These days, it is extremely difficult to determine what is low or medium income, as you well know, so many factors. So one would say, could you hazard, I know it might be tough at this point, could you hazard a guess of what we're looking at a housing unit, let's take the one bedroom for instance, would eventually cost, and who this low income earner or medium income earner could be that would afford that given today's prices?
So if we take it from two perspectives, one would be a typical one bedroom in today's economy, given market forces, would range somewhere in the upwards of over 20 million. However, under this program, we will be well within the threshold of between under 20 million, which is about 15 thereabouts. And like the Honourable Minister has mentioned, you can expand that one bedroom to a two bedroom tomorrow. That's one. But beyond the pricing, we have to look at what are the modes of acquisition that would enable these buyers access these homes. One of them is the Federal Mortgage Bank living up to its responsibility by providing affordable mortgages, which are the credit enhancements needed at 6% to buy a house like that.
It's the first thing we'll talk about the interest. That's
the point, that price point, that's the pain point. And then also, you'd also observe that the rent-to-own option has also become an option on the table, where your annual rental can now begin to suffice as your means of acquiring a home with zero, little or no deposits. So these initiatives are as a result of very close collaboration with the Ministry of Housing, where we bring the best of ideas to the table, we discuss them thoroughly. And one thing I can tell you about the Renewed Hope Estates and Cities Plan is the thoughtfulness as a thorough end-to-end process that has gone through it to say, beyond just the delivery of the homes, how do we empower Nigerians to acquire these homes, and how can we also add value to Nigerians by providing them with options to own these homes and provide them with access that can make these homes affordable. So I think holistically you would say that this is a well thought through program.
Okay. Let me come to Nii on a different aspect of this now. And with this, people talk about the political economy, and you would explain more on that. But I'm looking at an aspect of this is a project meant to address the housing deficit. So we can safely say this is a people's project, right? But in most of efforts to address people's needs and desires, how much of it do you think a consideration is given to what the people themselves desire? And how do they respond to this beyond political lines? We have seen, particularly with housing, where politics had come in to muddle things up. What you see has been done differently this time to cut across?
the PPP approach. The PPP approach is profound. It has been a major desire of most governments in the past to involve the private sector in collaboration to deliver such welfare projects. And because the people ecosystem talks to efficiency and of course application of resources for value and for returns. So where you have the PPP template, it means we are bringing the bureaucracy of government and the efficiency of the private sector together, and we are likely to have a right mix. It's not the first time we are having this, in this mix, but it's the first time perhaps we are having an active, from what I've just heard now, an active engagement from the 0 points. Because normally policy would have been designed, a blueprint would have evolved from that designs as well before the operators would be invited.
Correct.
So which means there has been a gap, that had been created between the conceptualization and the development of the blueprint. But where you have the operators or the financier or the funders, as the case may be, developers, as the case it is now, being part of the process from the beginning, it creates a whole new ecosystem. One, I think I heard the Honorable Minister talks about cultural adaptation.
Right.
That for me is profound, because if you have a design, for instance, that is universal, it's a wrong approach. For every state, for every zone you go to, there must be an adaptation to the culture of that environment.
Simple. We would even put that to the minister himself. Because
yes, he hinted that, and I think that is appropriate.
In my part of the country, the kind of housing I would require would be different from
definitely
from yours for certain factors, of course, cultural factors,
culture, environment, weather, and all that. I think that is appropriate. Then, secondly, for the larger economy, I think this has a huge multiplier effect. Huge multiplier effect. It's been a long, in fact, I don't think it's been a long while. We've never had a situation where you have 100,000 units of houses to be built across 30 states. You're going to generate a lot of employment doing that. You are going to create a lot of side service tunnels into those production, in the delivery of those estates and cities. And when you create cities or even estates, you are adding value to land in that area. So it's a huge multiplier thing. And it's the developers now, these private sector people, that will benefit the most, because yes, they are going to see it more globally than what even the ministries are saying. For every development they are doing on a parcel of land, the land in that hemisphere becomes more valuable. So it's just for them to acquire more, So if they are going into that land space at, for instance, 10,000 per square kilometers, per square, it is likely that by the time they are concluding their landed property would have grown by 100%. And it's big money waiting to be picked.
All right. In addition to the studio discussion, we have a number of reports, and the first we'll like to take at this point is from Lagos.
Shelter is one of the basic needs of man, crucial for survival. However, various efforts to have a roof over their heads. According to World Population Review, only 25% of Nigerians have a decent roof over their heads. Growing urban population, lack of efficient mortgage system, insufficient social amenities, and increase in construction costs are some of the factors militating against house ownership in the country.
Or if we have big-time housing developers that can in 1 year do 5,000 units, 5,000 units fully occupied will give you, you are looking at 5,000 times 6 minimum, at 6 persons per home. So you know what that means.
To tackle this age-long housing deficit, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu approved a total sum of 126.5 billion naira for delivery of 100,000 houses nationwide. While this move has been described as a right step, experts believe that more still needs to be done, especially in addressing bottlenecks, making workers' access to mortgage facility cumbersome.
One of the things we need to go back to and look at was our mud houses, the thatch houses. Now, somehow, we've abandoned that and they've gone. But there are economies that wouldn't have done that.
What we should do also is to improve the mortgage industry to make it more efficient for people to use mortgage to own, to buy or renovate a property.
Stakeholders believe that government-private partnership and a working mortgage arrangement by mortgage banks will reduce the stress and difficulty faced by Nigerians, especially civil servants' quest to have a place called home, because it provides security, personal safety, and protection from weather, as well as prevent health issues and diseases. In Lagos, Bolaji Akim.
Right, from Lagos, let's go over to Kaduna, where the next report comes from.
Kaduna State in the past few years launched a comprehensive housing project at Millennium City aimed at providing affordable and sustainable housing solution for the growing population. Millennium City in Kaduna, which is a new layout, is where most of these mass housing units are being sited, public or private. Some have been completed and put to use, while others are still undergoing constructions. The housing units are designed in such a way that people from various income brackets can afford, ranging from low-scale apartments of 2-bedroom and duplex for high-income earners.
You made the payments and paperwork, everything within a week.
Government has also streamlined the bureaucratic process for obtaining construction permit and land through the rebranded State Geographical Information Service (CADGIS) to make it easy for investors to build mass housing units for the people. At the moment, the state government has attracted investors. Qatar Charity Foundation currently building this mass housing units of about 5,000 capacity at Millennium City to be given out at no cost.
Other projects are also ongoing with the support of Kuwait Fund toward reducing out-of-school children in Kaduna State. Kaduna State will also be the first state in the whole of Nigeria to benefit from the Kuwait Fund intervention.
Been given funds of recent for the purchase of the houses, ranging from the outright purchase, we have the installment, we have the rent to own, and then we have other means of payment. So what we have been able to do, we have been giving out forms, and people have been filling and returning, which from this office will now send to the appropriate headquarters.
The little challenge you may have is due to the cost of materials. Today you buy something of 10 naira. Once you get tomorrow, now you hear it has changed to 20 or 15 naira. So that is the only challenges we are facing.
With the renewed Hope City initiative, more houses will be provided across the country, and the dream of Nigerians owning their own houses will become a reality. In Kaduna, Achari Maxwell.
All right, let's come back here to the studio where we still have the minister with us here. Well, Minister, let's look at another aspect of all of this, and land. Land is vested in the states. The governors are in charge of that. Sure. First, there are two sides of this we'll be asking. How you have sold these ideals to the states, and how they have bought into it, and how you are getting land. Now, I'm asking this because if I refer back to the Shagari era as well, we knew what happened to some states who were not aligned with what was in the center. Mm-hmm. They provided land in, some of the land they provided was in some, it was virtually in the forests. Far away, and this made it even more difficult for those houses to be built, and made it even more difficult for people to want to move to those places way out of the city. So we've had these experiences in the past. How are you going about this time around?
Well, I think this time around is quite different from the previous times, where we have opposition parties that are not aligned with the center party, not either going into the same program of the ruling party to deny even such services to their own citizens. This time around, I think it's a different ballgame. Most of the governors, whether they are in the APC states or the other opposition states, I think they are all aligning towards the welfare of their citizens. We sent a letter to all the state governors telling them that this is the vision of Mr. President, the Renewed Hope estates and cities that the President wants to do is one of its Renewed Hope vision for housing development in the country. And you are requested, please, to provide us 50 hectares of land, either in one chunk or in two locations, 30, 20, or 25, 30, 25, so as to build houses, affordable houses for your own citizens. We emphasize that we are building these houses for your own citizens. The President is not going to live there, is not going to send his party men to go and live in that state. It's the citizens of that state that this project is going to benefit. And we emphasize that the land has to be very much accessible and viable. If you try to give a land, most of the states in the previous, they used to give land. Once the federal demands for a land, they take it far away, thinking that the federal government will now do even the access and open up that area for the states to benefit from that. So we want to encourage state governors. Part of their contribution is to give a land free of any encumbrance and to be very much accessible. And then the federal government will now go in and then build the estates or the cities. At the same time, if the contracts are awarded, a chunk of the money is going to be spent within that state and for the benefit of the state. Jobs will be created, employment will be created, and the economic, at least there will be wealth creation on the construction of that house. Because for every house you build, you are creating a minimum of 25 jobs. So that kind of action that we are going to create is what will benefit the states. And luckily for us, honestly, we have gotten a lot of tremendous response from most of the state governors that are giving us that land. And that's why we don't have much problem toward that. And what we did for the initial takeoff, we intend to do, we started with 2 states per geopolitical zone. We sent to 36 states. But we told them we are going to pick 2 per each geopolitical zone. So whoever comes first within that geopolitical zone, we'll pick the 2 that come first. Even if you give us the land, we'll consider the one that is more accessible and then pick it, and then that your state will first benefit before the next budget where you can come in. Then that's the incentive we are trying to give, and many of the state governors are responding to it.
Well, we started talking about it earlier on, the cost of building materials, and in one of those reports there, you could see people, one of private developers saying the challenges with materials, building materials, which you cannot predict now. Again, perhaps some might see this as a foregone conclusion, that this is now a reason to look further inwards. And are you considering the construction of these houses? Are you considering the use of local materials which before now were not considered fashionable, even though by so many reasons these even are better in this environment?
Well, you'll find that 90% of the construction, or 95%, you'll find that they are all local building materials. Cement is a local building materials. Nobody can
beyond
say
cement.
That. Beyond cement, the chipping, the gravels, and others. The next thing you come to the doors and windows, aluminium windows on the roofing sheets. So you'll find that almost, I can say 80%, not to exaggerate, are all local building materials. If you think you have to go the other way of go to the lower income building materials, you'll find that you are not, some may not even be cheaper. If you think the bond bricks that we are talking about could be cheaper, it's not that as cheap, because the process of putting it into a cool session and ensure that you bond it to certain temperature for it to be durable you are not saving cost to that. The cost of one brick that is red bricks, that is burnt bricks, is twice the cost of a block, concrete block that we are having. At the same time, we are thinking towards lateritic compressed earth electric block, whereby a small percentage of cement is put into a red laterite and then mixed and then compressed, and then that one will produce a block. So even that one is another one which we are thinking that could be an alternative. But beyond that, you will find that the weather of rain, when it beats it, you have to at least plaster it behind that one. So at the end of the day, it may not be as cost and cheaper and faster than the normal concrete blocks. Quite well, building materials are becoming, the costs of building materials, every day rising, just like the cost of cement. You'll find that within 1 year, it has doubled from after 100% or even more. It used to be 4,500 mid last year. Now it's about 10,000 naira. And that's why we even have to invite all the manufacturers today into our office to sit down and discuss with them. Whenever there is rise in dollar, then the cement price will rise. And you'll find that I can say 90% of the materials there, they are all local materials, raw materials that are used to produce cement. So that's what we have to contend with and ensure that we move forward.
I might ask at this point, any guarantees, Minister, especially when you're dealing with the private sector, when midway, it's been known that private sector has demanded variations and things like that. Have those been taken into consideration? In fact, this time it's with you would ask.
Well, the honest truth is economic factors play a very big role in housing development and construction materials. However, we must also see the role of the private sector beyond the for-profit interests and also see this as a national agenda. And that is where collaboration again comes into play. And like I said earlier on, in the past, we've been used to providing our own infrastructure, our own water, our own support systems. This time we're seeing government taking some of that weight off our shoulders. So it only behoves on us to respond accordingly as well. To say, now that some of these costs are already being shouldered by the government, we should also reciprocate by maybe not expecting bumper profits, but doing what is necessary to create jobs and also create opportunities for Nigerians.
Okay, just before I come to you, there's this other aspect of it, and then we talk about the environment at this time. The world's going green. And when we say these cities, it connotes massive construction work, which of course will affect the environment, clearing of land. How have you built the need for greener cities and into this project that you have now to ensure that the environment doesn't suffer?
Well, that comes to the fact that most of the cities that we now have to produce, we have to ensure they emphasize on landscaping, because you will be compelled even to do the landscaping because it must be cheaper in the space we are providing than to fill it with concrete or asphalt. So we have to emphasize that only the necessary areas where you need a parking areas that should cover with concrete or pavement or asphalt, and ensure that more green areas are provided within the estates. This estate we have just did the groundbreaking. That is what we emphasized during the groundbreaking. Mr. President was shown how the landscaping is going to do a major part of it, apart from the road and the pavements. The other areas, we emphasize that they are in that landscaped areas to ensure that more green areas are provided, at least for the environment to look cooler and then look better.
Okay. Yes, here you come in.
On the green.
Yes.
I think it's the contemporary way to go. It's if the world is talking green and you have opportunity to create new cities, as it were, it will be a wrong premise to do things as, to construct estates or cities around the premise of the past. I think it's an opportunity to actually put the vision of a green environment into play, and they also use it as models, as it were, for other forms of construction. I believe that this prospect, as it were, will be contagious. Nigerians have a way of trending what we call the bandwagon effect. You see government driving this vision in collaboration with the private sector. Now, once a template is set and it becomes obvious in the public space, you now see independent private operators, private real estate entrepreneurs go into that space. And it will be based on the template of construction, that have been provided by the government-inspired developers that will be adapted. So we actually need this kind of template, to drive that the green vision. And I think beyond that, it also creates a new culture in environmental management, because now most people realize that flooding, for instance, is as a result of brick, mortar, and impermeable surfaces. So if you are going to manage flood in your estate or in your city, there should be that consensus of landscaping, of allowing heads, for most part of your compound, of even encouraging backyard small farming, so that you can have greens, in your compound and all that. So it's about creating that green culture around the estate. I am feeling, around the city, I'm feeling excited because when you talk of new cities, it's actually about new experiments, it's about new vision, new dreams. So if from the beginning there's that consciousness of environment input, into the models, either at the level of the city structure, at the level of the planning, the town planning and all that, we will be saving ourselves so much headache in terms of environmental disasters, as it were, because that is where it starts from. It's not just even about the beauty of the environment. It's about managing the environment for safety too, and it is essential.
All right. The provision of these cities and these estates, of course, will again draw on existing infrastructure. Side by side, as you're developing the cities and these estates, you are also looking at addressing another aspect of it. Well, you may say this is not your purview, but again, in planning, you take that into consideration. By the time you have these estates all up and running, 100,000 people are moving into their homes, and they are going to now draw from the same existing. That's not saying things are going to remain static anyway, but these are all things that work together. Again, keeping an eye on what's happening in other sectors. What are you prepared for, especially from the private sector?
Okay, thank you. I think at the end of the day, we have to think futuristic in any approach. Green is, like the Honourable Minister has said, and also a guest said, you have to be excited about the prospects of using green designs to govern building operational efficiency. And
putting up structures, for instance, that wouldn't require all these lights.
Exactly. So from your design point of view, you have to consider things more like daylighting effects, energy efficient bulbs, and then from there you go into the procurement items where we no longer have to use 20 liters of water to flush for very basic human activities. We can use more efficient systems to do that. We can look at how to improve air circulation within the buildings. We can look at more efficient ways of redistributing our wall to window ratios and so on, and even bringing in the effects of solar roofing systems to help balance energy consumption. So at the end of the day, we understand that it will be unwise for us to put another 100,000 houses on the grid, for example. And you can see again, this stems again from very clear leadership where some of these responsibilities have now been devolved into states, where state governments are now allowed to do some of these things. But even at the mini level, you can also create microgrids and mini grids using solar systems, in addition to some of these green building efficiencies that we have been able to implement in the design phase. And it's important to note that some of our designs are going through that audit process to ensure that we are also making significant progress in terms of establishing a very solid foundation and very extensive green building footprint in line with some of our commitments at COP28. As you know, the building industry is one of the largest contributors to greenhouse gases, and that's why we feel that from the design point of view to the procurement point of view to the operational efficiency of the building, if you build green, you could be saving as much as 30% in terms of the O&M, operation and maintenance of the assets.
Well, at this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, there'll be more on the plans and projects that we've been talking about, developing housing that would be affordable and accessible to the masses. And then we would also, in the next segment, have our phone lines open, which means you can join in the conversation. But stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. Now, this is the part where we open the phone lines and you can call in to either ask a question or air your views on the matter at stake, which is housing development and accessibility and affordability. Now, we say this every Tuesday. If you're calling in tonight and your call gets through to the studio, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or the echo. We also always encourage you to go straight to the point, keep it short and simple, so others can also get on the platform and air their views. And we say the matter of greetings, just don't bother too much. A simple hello would do. And whatever issues you raise, the minister is here and our other panelists are here. They'll take on and address such issues as you might raise. So, thanks for being with us. We'll start off with another of our reports. This one is from Enugu.
The federal government's renewed hope agenda has floodgates of policies and programs formulated to touch the lives of the citizenry. Provisions of massive housing schemes to address housing deficits and demands of the country's growing population is on the top priority in the government's programs. Consequently, to key into the agenda, Enugu State Government, on assumption of office, while rolling out infrastructural development plans, put to bed the prototype of massive housing plan proposed for each senatorial zone, civil servants, and low-income earners in the state. Hence, the adoption of establishment of housing schemes for civil servants and low-income earners as number 2 smart target strategies by the State Minister of Housing.
He said that he will want any civil servant who is retiring to retire to his home. So we are running the program of rent to own, and the Ministry of Housing has offered to the state that they want to start selling the plots, the housing units. The governor has offered to buy all of them and give them to our workers.
Civil servants in Enugu and other low-income earners have lauded the government's efforts in mitigating housing challenges facing Nigerians, but have appealed to the federal government and its state counterpart to subsidize the cost to make it affordable for workers.
The issues we're encountering today is the issue of affordability, and that is what we are looking at. So we want a situation where government will not only provide us, but subsidize. And the governor has promised to do that, particularly by providing the land and the aspect of infrastructure, where the state government will now key into the process to make it lighter for workers. Because in some cases, you see estates being developed for workers, but at the end of the day, it will be sold out to maybe business tycoons and political office holders because workers cannot afford it.
Enugu state government, through the internally generated revenue, is funding the massive projects to meet its commitment to providing shelter for the people. In Enugu, Ikeria Ugu.
Well, even as that report was on, the calls had started coming in, and we have the very first caller tonight, Mohammed, who's calling in from Maiduguri. Mohammed, if you're there, go ahead. Okay, we've lost that call. Well, we'll go straight to another of our reports. This one is from Rivers.
With an estimated 28 million housing deficit in Nigeria, Rivers State accounts for a significant chunk of this figure. The data above indicates that the demand for housing development and acquisition is no doubt high in the state. An average worker in Port Harcourt lives in a rented apartment, with just a few being able to own their own homes after retirement. The high cost of building materials and stringent conditions to accessing mortgage financing remain an inhibition for those who attempt to own theirs.
So they have to prepare a place, low-cost housing estate, to make a place for a living. Someone can go there and relax. Like if you go to overseas, you can see some places that make for common men to live there. So Nigeria is supposed to make something like that here.
Many persons could not afford to own a house of their own. And also many persons could not pay for house. So I think in order to curb the issue of house deficit, as we said, the government should try as much as possible to make regulations such that there should be price control.
But for the latest intervention of 20,000 housing units initiated by Governor Siminalayi Fubara, it has been a private sector driven effort at bridging the housing deficit in Rivers State over the years. Keen observers identify political factor as a key setback in actualizing government mass housing projects to meeting the target population.
You make your political cronies MDs of the mortgage banks. The last time we checked, about 4 years ago, there was about, I think, 46 trillion naira that was inaccessible in the federal mortgage system. So when something is inaccessible, it's not a solution.
A large chunk of the private sector-driven housing projects, observers note, is usually priced way beyond the reach of the average worker.
There are people that have worked for 35 years that have not built houses. See, what can you mortgage? Most of them are assetless. So how do you now create another mortgage item in the event of non-collateralness, where you cannot find anything to collateralize what you want to take as loan?
Analysts insist that until government reviews the policy of land acquisition, especially with respect to obtaining certificate of occupancy, liberalization of production and distribution of building materials, utilization of indigenous technology, among others, government intention for mass housing for the populace will remain a mirage. In Port Harcourt, Kingsley Amajiri.
All right, back to the studio here. Well, Minister, would like you to talk about these housing sector reform task. Oh dear. Well, is it this? Okay, well, apologize, Minister. Let's see if we can get back this caller on the line. Mohammed, who's calling in from Maiduguri. Hello, Mohammed, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Right, go ahead.
Yes. I have heard all what the ministers and other members of the table are saying, which is a very, very good. with the way we had it. But please, my recommendation here is this ministry have a regulatory body for price control, that they will be going around all their estates to make sure that those private companies that acquire their properties have also paid it out to the occupants at a prescribed price. Although you can't control their price because they want to know what they earn on top. But at least the interest we give them, let it apply to other low income earners like me now. I work with the federal government, but everything goes at the end of the year. After my children's issues, at the end of the year, everything the landlord will be on my neck. I want to own a house, but how will I go about it? Even if I go to the mortgage bank to apply for a house, they will only tell me to go through my organization. And my organization, I've never had that they are leasing a mortgage, but they are leasing a house for us to have where to live. And is that how are we going to retire without having a house? This is the only way we have, and this is the only way we can be able to acquire a house for ourselves. Because the salary is not that much. So please, Mr. Minister, you are welcome, and look into this matter. Let the federal government workers, although the state, like in my state now, the government is trying. You see a teacher's quarters, you see a doctor's quarters, which is owned by those workers. They are very happy. After their retirement, they are come back in one place. But we don't know our stand. Thank you very much.
All right, Mohammed, thank you. Well,
yes.
Minister.
Well, he was talking, I think, about how to acquire a house in Maiduguri. Quite well, there are many options. The first one, there are those houses built by federal government under the Federal Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. We have houses in Maiduguri there, and we have directed all state controllers to issue forms to any interested buyer for him to fill. But you have to go there to the estate, choose the house you want, fill the form, and give it to the controller, who will process and send to the head office for allocation. On allocation, if you have the money, you pay outrightly. If you don't have the money, you pay instrumentally if you can't pay outrightly, or you go to the same mortgage bank, federal mortgage bank, to create rent-to-own for you. Rent-to-own is an avenue whereby you don't need to pay any equity. It's a zero equity, to which FMBM will pay the Federal Ministry of Housing that cost of that house, and then we create a rent-to-own contract between yourself and the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. They deduct 33% of your salary until you repay the loan throughout your tenure of service. Otherwise, if those houses are not available, Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, I know they have built some estates in Maiduguri. There's one NLC-TUC collaboration. There's another one to which is 2 cooperative or 3 cooperative society houses that were built, estates along Gamboru Road. I know those houses that, Bama Road, sorry, along Bama Road that were constructed, and they are there for you to choose. If you can't get any of this, acquire a land with a title, good title. Federal Mortgage of Nigeria, I give you individual construction loan for you to build the houses incrementally, to which once you have the designs, the costing, and the Federal Mortgage will give you loan to build the houses and then your house incrementally. And I think it has been streamlined. It's much easier to get that loan. It doesn't even have to go to the board of for approvals. The executive manager will approve the loan, and then you start disbursement to you, to which you build the house. So these are some of the ways to acquire houses or to acquire mortgage loan from the federal government institutions.
Well, of course, that ties in with the need for some of the reforms in the housing sector, which will enable people in that category is talking about access housing. And so, which was exactly what we wanted you to talk about and explain to us more about these task teams to carry out these reforms and their mandate.
Yes, the first task team that we have established is that of Housing Institutions Reform Task Team. That one is to look at the housing institutions that are under the ministry or that are the housing institutions that are within the country, the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, the Federal Housing Authority, and even the Family Homes Funds. These are the three basic institutions that are tasked with the responsibility of providing houses or homes to Nigerians. We realize that most of these housing institutions, they are not performing optimally for them to deliver their mandate. In one way or the other, some are regulatory framework or some are, their regulatory framework need to be checked to ensure that legal and regulatory framework are streamlined. Like most of the act setting of these institutions are obsolete, need to be reformed, and how they can be able to do that. So that task team were given the mandate to look at those regulatory framework and legal framework setting of those institutions to see how they can be reformed through the legal, through going to the National Assembly to reform the Federal Mortgage Bank Act, to reform the National Housing Fund Act that was established in 1992, and the Federal Housing Authority Act that was established since 1973, 50 years ago. So these are some of the institutions we have to look at. To also look at the second reform institution is that of land reform. The land reform is there to ensure that the Land Use Act is looked into to ensure that it's reformed to be able, because it looks obsolete, to ensure that there is easy access to land and cheaper and faster access to land. Already there is a presidential implementation committee on land that was established by the federal government. So that report of that committee needs to be also looked at to ensure that that Land Use Act is reformed that will lead to establishment of the National Land Commission that will operationalize the National Land Use Act. The third one is that of the multi-agency delivery task team. The multi-agency delivery task to see that how all the other institutions charged with under housing institutions, they can collaboratively work together to see that they optimize their own operations. You'll find that everybody is going on silos, constructing houses. Some are not aligning with the focus of the government, especially in the national housing policy that we intend to have. And the last one is the building material manufacturing hubs, to which we intend to ensure that building materials manufacturers, we look at the constraints that are constraining the building materials to produce optimally, to produce at least within the budgetary limit or within to ensure that the building material manufacturing hubs are established in each of the political zones of the country. So
right.
These are some of the housing institutions.
So we'll look at some of them in more detail, but we have another caller on the line, Anthony, calling in from Jos. Hello, Anthony.
Hello, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, sir.
Hello, Anthony, go ahead with a question or comment.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm very much interested in this your discussion. Honestly, sorry, it is my opinion. I want to say most of the things discussed there by the panel, they are mostly theory. I am a civil servant. Instead of discussing the problems, let me start with solutions. I would want to say, one, the issue of these housing problems. You see, if an employee is employed at a time, the first time he is employed, I think there should be discussion, a policy, that the issue of contribution of housing should start at that date that he starts his civil service career. That will make him to have enough money to get a house built by either an agent or the government. Secondly, the agent too, I think they are giving a lot of money that people should pay for whatever they are doing. How can somebody retire? You don't even collect up to 5 million or 3 million. A house will be given to you at the rate of 15 or 20 million. How can you pay that? It is impossible. So I think the government should do something by building the houses themselves and give it on occupier basis based on the civil service deployment. The way they should distribute it, it should be like the one that this palliative is being going around. Meaning that, my suggestion, as a civil servant, you should present your ID card and your whatever that is given to you for employment, so that that thing will be allocated to you as a house. For this palliative, I think that thing that they use for election, the ID card that is used for that electoral process, that should be used for every person who wants a palliative. You should go to where your polling unit is and present that your card with the title of your own voting. Then they should be giving you. Maybe allocate and do your account number.
All right.
Put it there. Whenever it is being allocated, they should give you. Don't so for the civil servant. It should be done like that.
Okay. All right. Okay. Anthony from Jos. Thank you. Your suggestions are going to be assessed here. Right. Thank you. Right. Yes. Well, you just had Anthony saying he's expressing doubts about being able to afford these houses because he used the figures 15, 20. I doesn't think it will be. But again, part of this discussion is that people who cannot outrightly afford these can also, access these houses through mortgage loans.
Yeah. What's important, what he needs to know is that that's why the National Housing Fund was created. It was created so that Nigerians can contribute 2.5% of their monthly income into the pool of funds that is being managed by the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. Through this pool of funds is the only place where you can get a single-digit interest rate mortgage or rent-to-own mortgage in order to acquire your own house. And all this, whatever you need to acquire, is a factor of your affordability, 1/3 of your income. So whatever loan you are going to get, just factor 1/3 of your monthly income down the number of years for you to reach 60 years. That is the maximum you can access. You can, if it is just 2 million, then you can design a house of 2 million, acquire a land with the CFO, then approach Federal Mortgage Bank and ask them to give you a more loan of 2 million. They can give you that loan for you to build that house that you can afford.
Okay, another caller on the line, Abdullahi calling in from Abuja. Hello. Do we have Abdullahi on the line?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Go ahead.
Yeah, I must already commend Mr. President for initiating the Renewal Hope City Estate in across all the federation in Nigeria. But sir, my question goes to the Honorable Minister. On the hierarchy of human needs, shelter consider basic need of human according to simple economic principles, sir. After man, then you talk about clothes, food, the next thing is shelter. But my own observation or comment on the aspect of housing system in Nigeria, you can categorically agree with me that about 69% of the housing district in Nigeria we are having a lot of problem, and most of the civil servants don't have houses of their own and they cannot access the mortgage platform, the mortgage product to access those houses. Like for me, let me use myself as an example. If, for instance, my salary is I'm collecting 200,000, and according to the financial regulation, I can't take 1/3 of my salary. And for instance, they give loan of 10 to 15 million naira, and the housing that I'm going for is between 25 million. How can I access the remaining balance to pay to the government? So most at times, I consider this aspect of the process of getting house through Federal Mortgage Bank is very tedious for the average civil servant, because there is no how a civil servant can acquire house. But eventually, his salary is 150,000 naira. No. Honorable Minister, sir, you use your good office and also portfolio of the government in order to assist the civil servant so that they should own their own houses. Because categorically, sir, Nigeria's civil servants are really suffering, because if you go to the court now, sir, more than 80% of cases in the court is between the landlord and the tenant. So if government can categorically bring out a system that will work for Nigerians as a civil servant, at least it will reduce the housing deficit in Nigeria. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Abdullahi.
Yes, yes, thank you very much. I think quite well you said that many of the civil servants cannot afford the mortgage, and it's difficult to access. But most of them, you find that they have not even tried it. All those who usually say that, like yourself, I doubt if you have even tried approaching the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria how to access it. It's important for you to go to any of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria branches nationwide, wherever, if you're in Abuja, either FCT branch or the headquarters, to ask them, how can I access this mortgage? If 1/3 of your salary cannot afford you the house to the end of your tenure, the pension funds that you have already saved, 25% of it can be used as equity. If the house is 10 million naira, maybe by now you have maybe 2.5 million already in your pension fund. So that 2.5 million can serve as equity, and the mortgage bank can fund the 7.5 million naira for you, and you have acquired a house. So there are a lot of ignorance, and people are not going there to inquire, to be acquainted with how and where to get these loans. So it's important for you to do that, and I'm sure that they will direct you on how to do that. There are many other products in that bank where you can be able to access this mortgage and acquire a house. Thank you very much.
Okay, now this other aspect, and we've had calls so far from people who, oh there, okay, another caller, Silas from Gombe. Hello, Silas, go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening.
Good evening, Silas. Go ahead.
Yeah. I want to greet the panel and also to commend you. My question is on this housing unit. It's like, hello?
Please go ahead. We're listening. We're listening to you. Okay. Go ahead.
The federal housing unit in Gombe, the prices are the same with that of Abuja and also Lagos. So I wonder, a civil servant that has only 60,000 naira has his salary. How can he afford a one-bedroom apartment for 8 million naira? Previously we used to say we have 17 million housing unit deficit in the country. And now the thing is increasing, even with the effort of the federal government in providing housing units for its citizens. I want the minister to please help us in the Northeast so that these housing units will be affordable and also accessible to low-income earners. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, Silas. Minister.
Well, honestly, you can't afford you can't buy what you cannot afford. You can only get what you are earning or your salary can be able to afford. I said it earlier during the question of Mr. Abdullahi from Abuja, that there are houses, the renewed hope estate we intend to build will have 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedrooms. And state governments usually do site and services within their own states, and they give a plot of land to the citizens of those states. Those kind of plots, they come with their own title, and with those titles, that's when you use it to approach the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria for you to get a loan to build a house that you can afford. You can afford to build a house that you can be able to afford. By then they can give you the money and then you build it incrementally. So with 50,000 houses, 50,000 naira, you'll find that your monthly contribution or deductions when you acquire a mortgage would be like 15 to 17,000 naira monthly. In 10 months, you are given just 150,000. So 150,000, you'll find that if it is 10 years, you can only afford 1.5 million naira. So in 30 years, you can only afford 4.5 million. So that's the maximum you can afford to buy for that. With the high cost of building materials, I know that you'll say that you can't get a house that is up to that level. But you can have a design that you can be able to do, that can be able to cater for your needs. Thank you.
All right. So far, those who have called in have said that they're civil servants. However, low-income earners are not just civil servants. We also have people who are not civil servants and who aspire to own homes. And
self-employed.
Self-employed people as well. Yes. So it's the same
informal
thing.
Sector.
The informal sector, everyone wants a home. So these are the ones who want you to address this. So it doesn't seem as if this is all about civil servants and civil servants alone, and those who are on structured salaries.
Yes, even those who are on structured salary, not only those who are on structured salaries like the civil servants that are going to benefit from the federal government initiatives. More so, the civil servant constitute less than 5% or 10% of the total population of the country. You'll find that the informal sector, in the informal sector, I have the chunk of the Nigerians who are earning legitimate earnings, and they have high income from there. The self-employed, many people are self-employed, the mechanics, the welders, and the drivers. Most of them, they are self-employed and they are making legitimate earnings on that. So the best way to go on that, if you want to enjoy anything from the federal government, then you have to key into the programs of federal government. One of the key programs of federal government is that of National Housing Fund. It's a contributions to which you have to make monthly. Once you are 6 months into contribution, then you can be able to get a mortgage loan that you can be able to have. It can be a rent-to-own or the mortgage loans, and it can be an individual construction loan. It can be even cooperative housing development loan, where a cooperative society can acquire a land, get a developer to build houses for your members.
Okay.
Right.
Our next caller is from Onitsha. Godwin, calling in. Hello, Godwin.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Go ahead.
Okay. My question is, this is a nice plan, but my question is, what is government doing to bring the cost of building material? Because the developer or the private sector doesn't manufacture material like cement is very, very expensive. And the road overnight, road has been that 207 has been selling for 5,500. Overnight has been was selling at 7,500 naira. Then talk of other material like timber, all of them are also skyrocketing. So what is government doing to bring down the cost of material? That also make it affordable for both the private, the civil servants, and also the people that are self-employed. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. As a government, we realized that even since last week, we realize that especially the cost of building materials in terms of the major one, which is the cement and iron rods that are skyrocketing high. The manufacturers now take it for granted that once there is a dollar rise or once there is a naira decline of naira due to exchange rate, they now increase the cost of their building materials. I said it earlier that last 8 months, cost of cement was selling at 4,500. Now it's getting up to 10,000 naira. And that one is unacceptable as a government. That's why we have to summon both myself and the even Minister of Works did that yesterday. For today, we summoned all the manufacturers of cement manufacturers to discuss with them. When they came, we addressed them by telling them that most of the raw materials that are used in producing this cement are locally sourced. So there is no point for them to come and say that the cost of building material, cost of the cement has to be higher. And we have to even commend one of the producers who was Bua Cement at one time when it was selling at 5.5, he offered to sell it at 3.5. That shows that it's doable. That shows that some of the producers are just ripping the nation or ripping Nigerians into that. So he started selling at that 3.5, but at a certain time he'll find that he will sell it, but the vendors who usually purchase from him, or the distributors, when they go out, they now sell it to the same market people are buying. And then and that is it. So you'll find that the distributors are the one reaping while the manufacturers are losing that kind of profit. So they confirmed to us that today that most of the reason why they are doing that is that there's cost of mining materials, mining equipment is high, which we have to decline that argument and ensure that we bring them to the board that if you buy the cost of mining materials or the mining equipment is high, most of the mining equipment that you'll buy, it can take 10 years you are working with it, and it's amortized within that 10 years. So you can't attribute that to the cost of the building materials. At the end of our meeting, they have now agreed that they may are going to reduce the cement to 7 to 8,000 naira per bag. To which even at that time we disagreed with that pricing. Now we have set up a committee to which they are now going to sit down and look at it, both the cement manufacturers and even the chairman of the Cement Manufacturer Association and representative from the Ministry of Housing, Ministry of Works, and representative even from the Ministry of Industries. This one, the government has taken steps to do that. That's why I said earlier during our task team, we are now looking at setting up the building materials manufacturing hubs. At the building manufacturing hubs, we intend to provide all the basic infrastructure that are needed in terms of site and services in order to do that. Because what they are saying is that the cost of gas for producing the cement is costing more than 50% of the cost of the cement. And they are buying that gas at a dollar rate, despite the fact that Nigerians, with the gas is being produced in Nigeria. So as a government, we are doing our best to see that we bring back the cost of building materials. Because if we don't do that, the building materials, no Nigerian will get a home. And then if there is no construction, there will not be employment. And all these lofty renewed hope cities and estates that we intend to do, I think may likely not take place. Yes.
We have Adebayo on the line from Jos. Adebayo, go ahead.
Good evening, good morning,
right,
the presenters and Honorable Minister. My question is, I used to be a civil servant. I work on the private sector, and I have this federal mortgage account, which they are remitting little amounts into my account. Then when I was working, I wanted to have a house under the scheme, but whenever I tried to approach the office, they used to tell me that there is no housing available at the point of time. So right now, I'm not working anymore with any sector, either private or federal government. I'm just ordinarily working on my own now. How can I still use my account, that federal mortgage account? Can I still use it to acquire something, either 2-bedroom or a room apartment in Chelsea? And how can I go about it? I just woke up and made a program, so and I've very developed interest in it. So I want the Honorable Minister to please assist, and where can I go to do this? Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Once you know that account number, you can approach the federal mortgage or any of the branch. They can be able to retrieve your account number and then continue from where you stop. And even if you don't have before, then they can now open a new account for you, and then you start contributing the 2.5% of your self-employed earning. And after 6 months of registering as a contributor, you can enjoy the loan of the Federal Mortgage of Nigeria at 6% and over a period of time. Yes.
Okay, so, so far the minister has had a lot to do answering all the questions. But let's bring in Akindolire at this point here. If you go by most of the questions that have been coming in, there's always that underlying factor about the cost of building, and then the people look at private developers as not being sympathetic to low-income earners. How do you respond to that?
So there are a number of factors responsible for the cost of production of a unit of house in Nigeria. One of that is the cost of materials, which is on one side of the aisle, and then you also have the cost of funding, which is also on another side of the aisle. And by the time you combine that with the cost of providing infrastructure, amongst other things, it makes the build-up of houses become expensive and out of reach. But there are ways to stem this particular challenge, and that's why we talk about collaboration. One of them is where we had to put on a design thinking cap, and luckily, like I said, we have a round peg in a round hole, where the Honourable Minister himself have chaired meetings where we've been doing design reviews, say how well can we bring down the cost of houses by using design as a tool to bring down the cost of houses. So whatever the impact is, it is still, it helps to move the needle a bit. Then we look at how do we bring in the kind of funding that can support housing on a kind of scale, and that would help us meet this threshold of affordability. And that's why we've approached low-cost finance institutions to see how we can collaborate with them, the likes of Shelter Afrique, some of the government agencies responsible for funding houses, to see how we can bring in the blended cost of capital to a point where it's affordable for Nigerians to acquire these houses. And then more importantly is really the fact that beyond the fact that we have to deal with the general circumstances of the economy, it would be a thing of joy for anyone, howbeit the houses may seem expensive, but with a little bit of credit enhancements, you can still find yourself on the housing ladder. Like the gentleman that mentioned, he earns 200,000 per month, and he's somewhere in Gombe. If you multiply 1/3 of that's his salary over 12 months, that will probably equal to his rent in that location. And that's why the rent to own program comes in, where your annual rental payments can fit into your homeownership dreams. So I think part of the lessons learned is we need to do a lot more public enlightenment that help people understand. Like the Minister said, ignorance may be a factor. You haven't tried, and you just assume that it's not there. So more Nigerians can expect a lot more in this particular administration.
Well, even the gentleman who talked about it in 200,000 a month would not, in many cases, be considered as low income because you're looking at people who earn just 30, 40,000 a month, and they also would want to own a home. Definitely. So, are they ruled out of all these arrangements?
Honestly, no, and that's why they're targeted products. You know, for example, we have a relationship with the ministry to sell some houses at a subsidized price point, because we understand the role government is playing to support production of housing output. So the ones we bring in within those subsidized price points is what we can move to people across that ladder. Not everyone has to have a 3-bedroom or 2-bedroom. A 1-bedroom is a good starting point. And at a subsidized price point, I'm sure somewhere along the employment ladder you can get on the rent-to-own scheme to own one of those houses and begin to understand how the economics drive the prices of houses to move to the next phase.
Well, Minister, let me come to you on this. Functional, yes. Well, no. Accessible, affordable, yes. But there's the aspect of being functional, durable. And that is what decent. Right. And these are aspects that people will be looking at beyond just being able to access. After all, you say you can access the housing, now you can afford it, but what's the use of affording or buying a house today and 5 years from today you begin to look for another house?
Well, you always look at the specifications. You can design a 2-bedroom and you can sell that 2-bedroom at 20 million. And you can design that same design, 8 million naira can do it. It's just a matter of the specifications. You can decide to say that let's tile only the wet areas, the toilets and the kitchen. The bedroom, the living rooms, let's just secrete it, because that's what I can afford. You secrete it, you put leather, and then you live in. You don't have to put POP ceiling on your ceiling if you can't afford. So all you need to do, somebody can come and put a POP ceiling, Paris, but someone can put a PVC ceiling, and in the same type of house, in the same estate that you are having. That's why we want to do that cross-subsidy, in order to have an inclusive living within that estate, to ensure that you play with the specifications in order the low income to afford also to live in that house. When his income improves, it's a matter of raising the scale to the specification that he can afford at any point in time. He can put marble maybe when he has the money, and from the ceramic tiles that he has, or even from the screed flooring he's having. So that's the criteria for you to look at it.
Well, from the developer, this is a worrisome trend that we've seen in this country, sadly. And this now is where we're addressing the matter of quality structures. It's a shame that the issue of building collapse in Nigeria is one that we're facing over time. And for many instances, the tendency of mass building projects where quality control begins to be overlooked. Some developers have been known in the past to do certain things, cut corners in order to maximize profits. Now, this has led to so many incidences. Although you would hear they say when all those structures come down, they probably have been put up by quacks. But again, we have not been able to put a finger on what, the causes of this phenomenon. Now, in this project, we're talking about quality control here, What is the private sector? You are the lead consultant to the developers. What are you bringing in partnership with regulatory authorities to ensure that every single one of those units you're putting up are up to standard, using materials to the correct specification and everything of that?
Thank you for that question. So, building collapse will originate from two key areas. One is either due to substandard materials, the other could be due to design failures. So let me take it from the second. We've gone through a very rigorous process with the Ministry of Housing to ensure that the design standards for this project meet best-in-class designs. And obviously, when you have the Honorable Minister being an architect himself, it will be difficult to pull a wool over his eyes and he won't spot it. Like I said, he's chaired meetings where we've gone through thorough design reviews to ensure that these houses meet the minimum requirements and they are functional. I think that's really the first point of call. The second is based on the designs, the materials in question. We've had to make sure that we source directly from the manufacturers to ensure that we can work with them to deliver on this objective. So a lot of bulk procurement is involved in this process. But let's now take it down to even the practical details in terms of implementation. So when it comes to implementation, we have to understand that we have a very thorough quality management system in place to ensure that any vendor participating in this project is thoroughly checked, thoroughly assessed, and ensure that that vendor has a standard quality management system that helps us to guide through the construction process. So we ensure that material testing is priority on the project done by independent consultants. We ensure that the cube testings are done as at when they are due, 7 days, 14 days, 21 days. And we ensure that the material specifications meet the quality as specified by the Ministry of Housing, they've also spent significant time and energy coming up with their own supervision plans. So they come in at random times to check each of the sites where are things under the Department of Public Buildings to ensure that the materials being used on this project at the minimum meet the expectations of Nigerians. So when you have that kind of collaboration where you have your regulator looking over your shoulder at every point in time, and you've also put in place a very thorough quality management system in place to ensure you can monitor the effective delivery of this project, I want to assure you that the Renewed Hope Estates and Cities and Estates will not be one of those projects where you'd see building defects, and much less talk about even building collapse.
I think it has landed very well, because I think the whole thing has to do with professionalism, proficiency, especially, and of course, how do I want to do it now? Minus profiteering. What's the incentive, for the incentive for deployment or the use of low quality.
Let's just put it up. I mean, it's these people who are going to live here anyway.
So, but I think the spirit here, the vision is different. The vision one is to impact, on the living standard of the low cost person, especially. And I think the idea for me is also impressive. One, assessing, especially through the rent to own, that not many Nigerians are talking or are excited about these products, but it is actually a product of their routine existence, about their everyday lives, But it's as if we have become accustomed to the exploitation, of the landlord, We pay monthly for our rents. At the end of a year or 2 years, the landlord increases the rents, and we keep paying. In 3 to 4 years, the value of the asset, the value of the house or the building increases in the benefit of the landlord. The landlord, despite that appreciation of the asset, also now increases the rent, you know. And if you are staying in an apartment, for instance, for 5 years, and let's say for 100,000 a month, you are paying 1.2 million, you know, a year. Across 5 years, you have paid 5.5 million in those 5 years. When you are leaving that apartment, you are living with zero value. What you have paid has disappeared. Yes. It has no impact going forward in your life. So what you are now left with is to start all over again. So, but with this rent to own, you know, it's for me, it's more impressive because you move into your house, you are paying the rent. At the end of a certain period, 10 years, 20 years, you own the house.
Well, Minister, on a final note, as with most government projects, there is always the aspect of the people's skepticism about intent and about the will to see it through. You want to assure Nigerians that this project is beyond politics. This project is one that the people can count on, and they can turn around and say, Minister, you said this at a particular time, and we want to hold you to account to say, have you delivered?
Well, I think it's beyond rhetorics. I can say that this government is less than 1 year now, but currently contract award has been awarded for 15 states, and we have not even touched the 2024 budget. This one is a supplementary budget that the federal government gave in 2023, just 7 or 8 months that time when we came on board. So it's beyond rhetorics. With that, now we can do that with 15 states that we are taking off. I'm sure with the budget that we are taking off, 6 more states may be added. That makes it 21 states. So at least 2/3 of the country has been covered. This is just on the budgetary allocations. Now, talking about the private PPP we are embarking upon, to which the federal government, to which we have already signed an MOU with them to deliver 100,000 houses nationwide. This is another aspect to which is also ongoing. Currently, today we are discussing with them in my office that they are going to take another 3 more states where they are going to do another Karsana site in it. They are going to add another one in Lagos, then Enugu, and Port Harcourt. This is what we intend to do. Already we are doing Renewed Hope City in Kano, we have awarded. And this time, let me mention them. We have taken Kano, Katsina, Sokoto. We have also taken Gombe and Yobe in the northeast. We have taken Benue and Nasarawa in north central. This contract has been awarded and contractors are about to start and the state governors are giving sites. We have taken Ebonyi and Abia states in the southeast. In south-south we have taken Akwa Ibom and the Delta states. In the southwest we have taken Oyo and Ogun states, plus the Lagos, to which we hope that Mr. President will also do the groundbreaking similar to the one he has done in Karsana. So these are the sides that contract has been awarded and the money is on ground and things is going to take off. So it's beyond rhetorics. Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, as we always say, no one program can take care of all the issues, and we must have to leave this conversation here and say a big thank you to all our guests. Let me start by saying thank you to Nia Kishuju, who is a financial and development expert and chairman, Independent Media and Policy Initiative. Thank you.
Pleasure as always. Thanks so much.
And thanks to Akindolire Oluwadamola, the lead consultant for the consortium of developers. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you. And big thanks to the Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Architect Ahmed Musa Engiwa. Minister, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Cyril Stoba.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you too for being part of it. Next week, we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stoba. Bye for now.
Thank you.